Hello everyone, today I'm going to be talking about vaping, and more specifically about what it is and the health complications that can go along with it. I became interested in this topic after seeing a few commercials on TV by the company Truth. My favorite one that always stuck with me is the commercial they created entitled Animals Against Human Testing. Take a look.
In a wild turn of events, animals are demanding Juul not test on humans. Mario?
No one knows the long-term effects of juuling, so any human who uses one is being used as a lab rat. Thank you.
Let's hear from Doug the Pug and his fellow protesters.
I will never stop fighting Juul. Or the mailman.
Nicotine is trapping humans in a rolling cycle of addiction. Oh, excuse me.
Thank you, Cupcake. Fact, no one knows the long-term effects of juuling. Do you?
After seeing this commercial, I started wondering what the facts were that made them able to make these seemingly crazy claims. When I looked up the company's website, this was the explanation. It said, "We know what you're thinking. Animals can talk? Yes, but that's not important right now. You know what is? The fact that Juul is selling a product that contains super addictive nicotine without knowing what it'll do to people's health 20 or even 50 years down the road. A product that hasn't even been reviewed or tested by the FDA. This led me to want to research more about the health complications and regulations surrounding vaping in general. I also wanted to find out more about the organization that was posting these commercials. What I found on their website was that Truth is an organization that protests the use of big tobacco, smoking, vaping, and opioids. And their main goal is to present the facts. So get as many facts out to as many people as possible, the most shocking facts, and they put them at the end of all of their commercials to kind of encourage people to do more research on the subject and why these things could be dangerous or harmful. They also have the very popular commercials that you see about the different puppets, and they're just quick one-liner things, and they just get you thinking. They also seem to focus on a specific company in terms of vaping. They tend to focus on the Juul company, which is only one company that produces juices for vaping products. But it's not the only one out there. So I brought in my research to encompass all of vaping, not just Juul, which is what they seem to be targeting.
Honestly, yeah, guys, I've been vaping, but it's safer than smoking.
Not really, because if you vape, you're 4 times more likely to start smoking cigarettes anyway.
4 times is nothing, bro.
Sure it is. Imagine having 4 times as many cats.
Or 4 times worse vision. Or 4 times more of Kyle.
Whoa, that's a lot.
If you vape, you're 4 times more likely to start smoking cigarettes.
So first, I'm going to start off with what is vaping. Vaping is the act of inhaling and exhaling aerosol, referred to as vapor, that is produced from an e-cigarette. E-cigarettes do not produce tobacco smoke, but an aerosol that is often confused with water vapor. The vapor also consists of fine particles that contain toxic chemicals linked to cancer, heart, and lung disease. In addition, the e-liquid and vaporizer products usually contains a propylene glycol or vegetable glycerin-based liquid with nicotine, flavoring, and other chemicals or metals, but not tobacco. Some people use these devices to vape THC, the chemical that is responsible for marijuana's mind-altering effects, and some even use the device to vaporize synthetic drugs like flakka, which I will explain more about in my coming slides. There are many different types of e-cigarettes that are out there on the market. The most popular being the large size tank devices and the rechargeable e-cigarette. The rechargeable ones are really popular because they're easily concealable. They're really popular among the younger populations that participate in vaping, and the tank devices were the kind of generic, like, main device when vaping was first introduced, so a lot of people have those as well. E-cigarettes are battery operated. They contain a space for changeable cartridges that hold a solution of dissolved nicotine and propylene glycol called juice. They also have a heating element that changes the juice into vapor that the user inhales. Now I'm going to break down some of the chemicals and ingredients that you may find in vaping juice. Some of these things include flavoring such as diacetyl, a chemical linked to serious lung disease, cancer-causing chemicals, heavy metals such as nickel, tin, and lead, ultrafine particles that can be inhaled deep into the lungs, volatile organic compounds, and of course, nicotine. One specific chemical that could be included in some juices and that could potentially be dangerous is the chemical compound THC, or tetrahydrocannabinol. As I mentioned earlier, THC is the chemical in weed that is responsible for its mind-altering or high effect. The chemical binds to CB1 and CB2 receptors in the brain, and when it does, the ECS, or the endocannabinoid system in the body, simulates the release of dopamine in the brain. This creates a sense of euphoria and relaxation. In other words, THC overactivates the functions typically regulated by this ECS, like mood, appetite, cognition, and perception. This, in turn, can reduce the immune system's overall effectiveness. Another very harmful drug that has been used in vaping products and in vaping juices is a drug called flakka. It's a new drug that comes in the form of pink or white crystals. It can be snorted, eaten, injected, or vaporized. It's the cousin of bath salts, but it's much more addictive. And it's more dangerous than cocaine. It causes dangerous and violent behaviors in its users. There is potential for permanent brain damage and damage to the kidneys. It's also very, very potent, and it's very easy to overdose when taking this drug. And just a small dose can lead to heart-related problems, violent behavior, spikes in body temperature, and paranoia. It also causes cases of extreme strength or invincibility that puts the consumer in dangerous situations. And it's also very cheap for drug dealers and other companies to acquire. Last but certainly not least, I want to talk about nicotine. Almost all of vaping products contain some amount of nicotine, but it greatly varies from product to product. Nicotine is a chemical compound or stimulant drug and is the main psychoactive ingredient in tobacco. It is highly addictive. Tar and carbon monoxide are released when it's burned or smoked, and there is no safe level of any drug use, even with nicotine. It's still highly addictive and still causes health problems. And the long-term effects can lead to respiratory diseases such as asthma, coronary heart disease, which is when the arteries become too narrow, aortic aneurysm, the enlarging of major blood vessels, and periodontitis, which is the yellowing teeth and gum disease. And nicotine in smoking is proven to be a major preventable cause of premature death and disability around the world. As far as nicotine-free vaping, there has been some products that advertise this, and some companies that create these. So it is possible, which it just means that there's more flavorings in the mixture. However, you still could be inhaling some toxic chemicals with these flavorings. There's really no regulations on anything that they put into the vaping juice, so even if it says it doesn't have nicotine or it doesn't, it may have other harmful things in it. So it's not necessarily better. Just as with the rest of the chemicals I talked about before this, none of them are safe, and you never know if they're going to be in the products or not, because companies aren't required to report that. Next, I'm going to talk more about the health complications and the dangers that can come from vaping. First, I'm going to start with what happens to your body immediately after vaping. In this diagram, you can see that in the mouth, some users report cotton mouth, scratchy throat, and coughing. And in the brain, dopamine levels increase as nicotine from the e-cigarette enters the brain. If you don't know what dopamine is, it's that feel-good neurotransmitter in the brain. And in the heart, e-cigarettes with nicotine raise heart rate and blood pressure. And with the lungs, nanoparticles from e-cigarette vapor might be embedded in the lungs, causing inflammation and raising infection risk. Also, further dangers can be seen in this chart to the left. There's many dangers that go along with this, including a health scare where vaping is no safer than smoking regular cigarettes. Studies have shown connections between vaping and brain, heart, and lung damage. It also increases the risk of developing cancer. Vapes and e-cigarettes also contain ingredients that are known poisons. Some even include the same ingredients as antifreeze and formaldehyde. You can also hurt others with vaping. Vaping around others exposes them to the dangers of secondhand smoke. The chemicals vapes exhale contain known cancer-causing ingredients. The safety is also unknown. As I stated before, the FDA has yet to regulate any of the 500 plus brands of vapes. This means that companies don't have to share what ingredients may be included in their products or provide warning labels for the unknown dangers they may cause. For example, in 2018, it was uncovered that a vaping product company called Chronic Juice, which is being shipped into the UK, labeled as a harmless e-liquid. The company refused to disclose the ingredients, referring only to a patent-pending flavor enhancer. However, laboratory tests commissioned by the Observer found it to contain a strain of synthetic cannabis that was banned in 2016. There are no regulations or laws that prevent this. No one knows what they're putting in their body when vaping. However, I do want to mention that there are some regulations out there on e-cigarettes, such as marketing to kids and selling to minors. They have smoke-free areas, but nothing in terms of the ingredients that can be included in the vaping products. And finally, vapes and e-cigarettes contain nicotine, a highly addictive substance. Nicotine acts as a gateway to other forms of addiction, such as alcohol. Next, I'm going to talk about vaping versus smoking. There's a big debate out there as to whether vaping is really any safer than smoking. I'm here to tell you that the answer is no. It's not really that much safer than smoking. Here is some of the counter arguments that people try to make for vaping being healthier than smoking, but as you'll see, there's many loopholes in the facts that they try to present. So here are some charts showing the opposite argument. Some of the points are that vaping is tobacco-free and completely odorless. Less harmful chemicals and toxins are used in e-cigarettes. but they don't say what type of chemicals are used in them and how much less harmful the chemicals are. From 0 milligrams upwards, you control your own intake. Almost 3/4 of users felt fitter after switching from smoking to vaping. But there's really no way to prove that or to prove that that's because they started vaping. It really depends on the pool they took from, and being fit doesn't necessarily mean well. Also, almost 1/4 were medically assessed as being in better condition after switching. Well, if you think about almost 1/4 were medically assessed, well, almost 1/4 is not a lot of the percentage. Moving over to the next chart on the right, these points say that nicotine is addictive but does not cause cancer, but with other things in vaping juices, it can cause cancer. Tobacco is the biggest cause of preventable death in the UK. Okay, so that's for part of the population. And e-cigarettes contain nicotine, not cancer-causing tobacco. That is basically saying the same thing as the first one. And there is no evidence that e-cigarettes harm bystanders. Pretty much any particles that you're releasing into the air that you don't know what they contain because they're not regulated, you don't know if that's what is harming the bystanders or not. So I suppose there's a point, but also most likely it's dangerous if you do not know what is in the particles that you're releasing, especially if it contains nicotine and possibly other harmful drugs and chemicals. So it's really not that much safer either way in terms of smoking or vaping, especially if you go off of the Juul company, which they actually do have 20 cigarettes worth of nicotine in their pods specifically. So there's really no way of knowing without knowing the ingredients, which no one has to tell you. So in conclusion, to sum up, the main points of why vaping is dangerous, it's because the long-term effects are unknown, because there are no regulations on the ingredients, and because it's so new, we have no idea what the long-term effects could be, specifically with vaping. There are also no official regulations on juices being sold, as I said, and by giving us new products without knowing the long-term effects or harmfulness of it equates to using us as lab rats to test a new compound, like Truth was saying. They're using us to test a completely new drug, a completely new system to get highly addictive substances into the hands of any user. And we should stop smoking of any kind, if not for us or our own good, then at least for our furry friends too. And that's it for me. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed my presentation.